Gather around, everyone. The season is changing. The leaves are falling. The weather is growing chilly. The time for fall is upon us, which means we're getting ready to hunker down and prepare for the harsh cold of winter. However, before all that, there's one yearly event that figuratively and literally keeps us on the edge of our seats, which is, of course, Halloween. Damn, that really hurts my throat. Yes, it's Halloween, one of the trans community's most celebrated events, which means I probably should have prepared a good subject for this video. Aha! Gaze upon this terrifying extraterrestrial! Wait, this doesn't terrify you? Well, it certainly terrified one person. Or at least, a certain part of it did. None other than Maya Forrestarter, J.K. Rowling's darling, discovered this seemingly cute little alien mascot and, in a terrified rage, took to Twitter to talk extensively about it. And when I say extensively, I mean, about 3, 4, 5 days and counting. Yes, really. What exactly did she want to talk about, you ask? The fact that this cutesy alien is obviously TRA propaganda aimed to trans our children, of course. Let's look at the tweet that started it all.
A mother with her baby daughter at Hitchin Library at Hertz Libraries, rhyme time aimed at 0 to 5-year-olds, messaged me. Bookstart Bear has been retired and replaced with Tala, a quote-unquote trans bear with they/them pronouns. I cannot express how upset I feel. Why do children need this?
Trans bear? Trans bear? Do you mean Tala transed into a bear? Or a bear transed into Tala? What the hell is going on? You might be thinking, CritFacts, this isn't the most on-brand content to just fall from the heavens into your lap. It's hilarious, addressing it as has minimal collateral damage of people having to see toxic stuff, so you don't even need the metaphorical oven mitts of comedy in order to. I already have a new ref sheet, okay? The art is by Nash, who is seriously awesome and you all should follow them. I say, as if I'm not promoting an account with 3 times as many Twitter followers or 10 times as many Twitter followers as we have YouTube followers. What? Where the hell were we? Oh yeah, the Olympus Mons of Weird Hills. So, an anonymous lady apparently messaged Maya Forrestarter about a new children's mascot with a possible trans identity. And that's literally all of the info she needs to make this into a spectacle. Not soon after she tweeted this, Hitchin Library, who owns the mascot, replied to clear things up.
Just to confirm, Tala isn't trans, they are an alien.
The parent who messaged me told me she was told Tala is non-binary and uses they/them pronouns.
And? For those of you who are unfamiliar with trans politics, this Tala discourse might seem like a really trivial thing to take issue with. But that's only because it actually is. Even if this fictional alien is trans, why is this so worrying according to Maya and her fans? Trans and non-binary people exist in society, so children should be aware of them. Should they not? Do you want a society in which kids are alienated, no pun intended, from knowing about the existence of certain minorities just because you don't like them? This type of scaremongering only works if you go off the assumption that being trans is some kind of social contagion, which we all know is false and is a claim that has been debunked by experts time and time again. See also ROGD. And anyone older than 25 will recall, again, the same logic used against the rest of the gay community. Remember all those first gay character in X announcements through the 90s, thousands, and even the 10s? Like, we only just got the first kiss between gay characters in a Marvel movie almost exactly 1 year ago at time of intended publication. Eternals was released to general theaters November 5th, 2021, because of this exact kind of cultural pressure against depictions of gay people as normal and just people like anyone else. Like, even movies that are about a hegemonic culture can make people feel alienated and cost our societies their unique gifts, such as How to Train Your Dragon. Even then, the existence of gay people has to be snuck in. There's a massive plot about the love between Hiccup's parents and how it was profound and lasted for around 2 decades of separation. But, well, there's another reason I didn't get married, is all of the acknowledgement we can get of the existence of gay love. I repeat, there are 37 Marvel movies, and the first one to show affection between gay characters was about a year ago. For reference, the number of Marvel movies without at least some on-screen heterosexuality is 0. I think there are still movies for straight people to find characters they relate to with on the very, very rare trait of heterosexuality. Experts say some people are still unaware of the existence of
homosexuality
because of how little representation they receive. Taken to its extreme, this logic results in Section 28, which was so popular because so many people wanted to reduce the number of anyone who would turn out to be gay later in life. And they believed that the way to do that was by shoving queer love and expression out of the public eye. That's literally where the term queer comes from. It's a reclamation of how the primary mechanism of homophobia was by defining a normal and everyone else is strange. Yes, the hike up this particular mountain is taking a lot of details. Because this case actually reveals so much of the gender-critical mentality if you know what to look for, and I don't expect everyone to have that information yet. So if this is news to you, I promise we'll put it in enough comic relief that you won't completely regret watching this video. Probably. Continuing on with our hike.
These are true things. Tala is a storytelling alien from outer space, so neither male nor female.
But wait, there's more! Maya then wrote this reply tweet in response to Hitchin Library's first response.
Some questions. Please answer. Is Tala non-binary? Why did you tell parents and children to call it they? Is it acceptable to call Tala it? It is not explained on the press release that Tala is an alien. Is it a separate briefing on the character for library staff?
Maya, for starter, is horrified by the idea of something not fitting neatly into a binary system. And that is, for her, a scary story. A hecking fright, some would say. Y'all alright? Yeah, I'm fine. Imagine her reading Isaac Asimov's The Gods Themselves, which features a species of 3 sexes. Or just hear about mushrooms, trees, flora in general, clownfish, and, it's... You see, transphobia is just a piece of weed in the family of xenophobias, and currently the most overgrown in the garden of the mind. Hatred of the others is a very resilient weed, and it grows by fear of the unknown, the different, the utterly strange. Everyone has their fears and phobias, but xenophobia is different. It is often cultivated by people who hate the other. Consider for a moment a classic in Halloween: giant spiders. Many people have arachnophobia, so they don't go and watch giant spiders eat Manhattan or something like that. They may even feel put off by a plastic spider taped on a house wall as they walk by at night. They might even go to therapy to treat this phobia. Xenophobes do not go to therapy. They think they are healthy and the solution is to reduce the source of discomfort and fear. It would be like an arachnophobe demanding to remove the plastic spider or walking around with a flamethrower and setting fire to places they think they saw a spider in, demanding the institutional removal of spiders from the ecosystem, and as such commit horrible crimes to make sure that their children and women are safe from the giant spiders. You know, the ones that totally eat Manhattan. What's that? Manhattan still exists? Well, not in the xenophobes' minds. They think that this is all Big Spider. If this sounds familiar to you, it is because we saw this horror story play out before, multiple times. Could bring up the usual ones: the black shirts, the screaming white men with guns, the gay agenda that destroyed children, the demon summoning tabletop game, one of my favorites even. All because whipping up fears is easier than examining where the fears are from. It's easier to say that trans people will steal your children and leave a changeling in the bed than consider, maybe I don't know my child as well as I thought, or maybe I should let my child explore options beyond what their birth implies. It is easier to whip up fears of the non-binary alien than to ponder, maybe children don't fear and hate non-binary beings like adults were taught to do. Maybe they can accept a harmless cartoon alien. But we then hear the usual protect children, evil predators, secret cabal, and it's always the same 5 stories. Should we always bring back the same 5 human horrors from the 20th century, or learn from them? It is very topical. Maybe on this Halloween, we should consider that when the veil is the thinnest between the worlds, we should take a peek and consider a world where fascism is not on the rise, where xenophobia is not trendy, where women and children are not assaulted for looking trans or seeming gay. Oh, and let's not forget about Mumsnet, who will always find a way to agree with everything churned out by their favorite GC martyrs, no matter how banal.
Literacy alien Tala earns parents' anger over use of pronouns. Article in the Times. Yet another example of the trans agenda being pushed on children who are far too young. It's an attempt to normalize they/them as valid pronouns and thus normalize gender and pronoun ideology. We are witnessing the indoctrination of very young children and their families. The explanation that it's just an alien so has no gender is disingenuous, of course. The fact that this genderless alien is they/them makes it all about the tea. The they/them character is going to be pictured on kids' library cards and be used for branding. Libraries are all about trans now. We no longer go, I'll never allow my older DC to pop into the library alone. My best childhood memories were browsing my local library by myself, but we can luckily afford to buy books, so that is what we do. People also might choose to have ad hoc communal libraries and book swap schemes with local friends. I hope Hertfordshire Council will reconsider this move, but won't hold my breath.
I hope you're wearing your tinfoil hats, because this is going to get pretty wild. Honestly, this thread has a bunch of crazy replies that range from simply agreeing with Maya to outright conspirational nonsense. But the OP and first reply condenses the general opinion on Mumsnet fairly well, if you ask me. Most of the other commenters basically claim that aliens should be addressed with it instead of them, and claim that calling them they makes things political. That last statement is obviously false since trans and non-binary people exist regardless of political affiliations, and the claim that Tala should be addressed as it is just silly because they're not an object. They're a character that kids are supposed to sympathize with. As contradictory as it might seem, you don't want to dehumanize a character whose main purpose is to interact with children. Of course, that's not to say that xenogenders or its pronouns are not valid, because of course they are. And if Tala was written to have its pronouns, then that's perfectly fine. We're not arguing against the use of those pronouns, but rather who is using them and for what purpose. Because I can assure you that a turfy prick calling Tala it is not doing so to validate trans individuals who use it/its pronouns. They are specifically doing so to invalidate all trans individuals. We don't see any of them calling Barney it, now do we? Couldn't have anything to do with the fact that he is a he/him, could it? So yes, TERF's very obvious reason to call Tala it is to dehumanize them. Stating otherwise is on par with CinemaSin's level of nitpicking while also completely missing the point behind the character's design. It's like saying,
why does Tinky Winky have to be a magical handbag? A magical alien being obviously wouldn't have to any concept of human accessories. Oh, and why do they have TVs on their bellies? Obviously, a race of magical aliens would be able to project any video feeds directly into another person's brain.
critique like that, if you can even call it critique, is deliberately missing the point of the character's design. This isn't hard sci-fi, it's a freaking kid show. Similarly, Tala is not an alien because they're designed to introduce children into trans ideology or some crap. They're created because kids think aliens are cool. That's really it. It's like applying actual science to fantasy movies about dinosaurs. As for this garbage post written by 20 Effrey,
They, them are valid pronouns, they have been for many decades, and you're a horrible parent and or grandparent for not allowing your kids the simple pleasure of browsing a library by themselves. You're an abusive control freak and you need help. Honestly.
but wait! You think it's over, right? You think we did the Mumsnet reply? So this has to be the end of the video, right? Oh, you sweet, sweet summer child. She wrote an entire follow-up thread. Brace yourselves, honeys.
Some more thoughts about Bookstart Bear and Tala. Because no, I don't buy the sneering argument that this is not important. Stuff about young children and mother is not beneath consideration. That's feminism. Library programs are one of the first outside things parents engage in with their children. Education involves slowly growing independence. Parents protect their children, and institutions must work with parents. Don't trust institutions and people who lie or are ambiguous. Bookstart Bear is shown as an adult, protecting and nurturing a child. According to the brand, he is male. Though, I guess most children will read this picture as a mama bear. Most babies and toddlers are primarily cared for by their mother. Tala is an otherworldly creature. The publicity doesn't even say alien. But one thing that is clear is it is an infant. Big eyes, big head, and to emphasize it, toddler clothing. So where does this infant, who takes they/them pronouns parents are told, come from? Where are its parents? Did it hatch from an egg, or was it born from a mama? Who looks after its interests? Ask these questions and you get the usual, you are obsessing about genitals. No, what you are thinking about is child protection. The idea that this alien species are not male or female, and that this is something we should all take in our stride, is the idea that the question of where this infant's mother is should not even be asked. The mother who contacted me about Tala was upset. Her instincts felt it was wrong, that the library was involving the parents non-consensually in an agenda they hadn't explained and were being dishonest about. Going out for the first month with your baby is a vulnerable time.
Good grief, there's so much wrong with this thread already. Somehow it gets even worse as she keeps digging. Firstly, the adoration of motherhood is absolutely nauseating and a typical telltale sign of conservative ideology. Particularly on the far right, people love to spout propaganda about keeping the birth rates high in order to preserve the white race, or some crap. It's mostly a smokescreen intended to hide the fact that they want to use children for their own personal benefits. And it's much easier to spread a political or religious ideology within your own family circles. It's the reason why fundamentalist circles emphasize creating big families. The other problem with this is that Maya's statement about parents protect their children only relies on stereotypes and nothing more. Abusive households are way more common than you think, and many trans people can attest to that fact since they grew up with abusive parents. But even outside of the LGBTQ+ circles, domestic abuse is very common, and the ever-rising number of people getting a divorce shows us this is no longer a stereotype we can rely on, if it ever was. Interesting to note that her fellow GCs are very much keeping things hush-hush regarding this Tala meltdown. Even her dear friend, J.K. Rowling, almost as if they don't want to be associated with the silly, out-of-touch ramblings of an old white lady with seemingly way too much time on her hands. The way she asks about where Tala's parents came from is exactly what I described previously in my CinemaSins example. She's forcefully applying logic that is simply irrelevant to Tala's design. Tala is an alien that is created by a library with the express intention of promoting child literacy. They're not Marvel. Maya is either deliberately missing the point, or just plain ignorant. I'm not a guessing fox, but if I had to wager, I'd say she's deliberately missing the point in this case, simply because we all know she is pushing an anti-trans agenda. She ends the thread by basically appealing to gut feelings. It never fails to amuse me how GCs and other conservatives love to berate trans people for basing their identity on feelings, in their words. Yet, when they base their arguments on feelings, it's portrayed as reasonable just because it involves a cis woman, or in this case, a mother. Hey Maya? Mums can be wrong about many things. As a personal example of this, I once brought a black friend home with me when I was a child, so we could hang out together. When my mom saw them, she sent them home and then berated me for bringing a black person to her house. True story. She's a mum, Maya, and she was a toxic racist. Not every parent's instinct is the correct one, and parents are just as flawed and human as anyone else. If you and your fellow GCs really do hate so-called identity politics as you often claim you do, you should knock it off with this strange glorification of parents. After this thread started doing the rounds, the memes really started pouring in, and Maya started to notice the backlash. This led to her seemingly last ramble on the subject.
Misogyny 101. Disdain for mothers. Things I say rarely get commented on by Owen Jones, Billy Bragg, Robin Moria Wright, etc. But the library rhyme time scheme really seemed to hit a nerve with these people and the hordes of TRA/MRA trolls who are playing it for lols. A bunch of people have jumped me saying I'm criticizing a book. Just to be clear, this isn't a book. People can write crappy books with ugly cartoon characters if they want. This is about a public library scheme for parents, mainly mothers and toddlers. My concerns, following a message from a mom who said it felt ideologically creepy and gaslighting, were 1. It is promoting gender ideology, non-binary, they/them pronouns, to children. 2. It is excluding parents, mainly mothers, who don't want this. Billy Bragg suggested that I am denying that men can have a role as caregivers. This is obviously silly. The fact is that most infants are mainly looked after by their mothers. This is part of women's lives. Parent and toddler groups in libraries, church halls, playgroups, 1 o'clock clubs, sports centers are not unimportant or laughable. They are mainly invisible to men and to younger women, as is most of the shock of bringing up children and how that affects women's lives. The lulls at Tala reflect the general disdain for the lived experience of mothers. You have just spent 9 months building a whole new human being inside you. Your body is battered and changed forever. You are off work. You are isolated. You may not have any local mom friends. You are in charge of a baby. You have never done this before. You haven't had a good night's sleep for months and won't for years. Everyone had an opinion on what you are doing right and wrong. Even getting out of the house feels momentously difficult. Then 2 years later, you are doing it again. This time with more experience, but more exhaustion. 2 sets of different needs to juggle. Baby and toddler. Buggy, juice, snacks, nappies, nap time, tantrums. And you have become invisible. You had politics. You had a career. You had interests. You had a sex life. Now you have the daily needs of a completely dependent person, and your world has shrunk. All of this has come quite the shock. You weren't prepared for it. So there's a local group where they sing songs and play with toys, give the toddler a biscuit and some squash. There are other moms there. You feel less isolated, but you also feel intimidated. Are you doing this right? Are you being judged? This is not the time and place for some ideologically driven council worker to push gender identity on you and make you feel like a bigot or an outcast if you resist. The fact that these men and the young women that cheer them on think this is so laughable reflects society's disdain for mothers. This is why it's important that we talk about women's lives, not quote-unquote menstruators, quote-unquote uterus havers, and quote-unquote pregnant people. This is what it means to say woman is not a feeling or costume. It is the whole life experience of being female. This is the hug of the resistance is on Mumsnet.
Well, what do you know? It's more glorification of motherhood. It seems the gender-critical crowd is not any different from the men's rights activists, the anti-abortion movement, and so many similar sexist groups that all go against bodily autonomy and deny women the possibility to be anything else but what their sex demands them to be. Mothers. It could be a horror movie. The sexism that will not die. Now in black, white, and red again. Oh, and just to reiterate one more time, MRAs are still on your side, Maya. There's a reason why your friend Helen Joyce was recently having a friendly conversation with Jordan Peterson and nodding along to everything he said. Let me just put it this way. Anybody who's friendly with the likes of Jordan Peterson has no right to be calling anybody an MRA, considering the fact that Jordan is pretty much the flagship MRA that every internet incel looks up to. Projection isn't going to get you out of this one. Also, Maya seems particularly frustrated when describing Tala as an ugly cartoon character. It kinda ruins her vague attempts at trying to come off as totally not obsessed. Don't you agree? I also want to mention how quickly the transphobic rhetoric of we just care a lot about child safeguarding, actually, falls apart when the topic of parenthood gets brought up. They don't care about the fact that Tala's design was based on the input of various children's drawings. As soon as they suspect that children's cartoons is some kind of trans propaganda, everything goes. From excluding your kids from entering public places, to cutting off their social circle, to limiting their access to the internet. Their idea of parenthood is all about control, and therefore the concept of children even being accepting of trans folks is absolutely terrifying to them since it doesn't completely mirror their will as a parent. Just like the MRA chuds they pretend to hate, they don't view their children as human beings. They view them as props they can use to bolster their own ego. I suppose that if you don't possess a strong personality, controlling others by way of offspring is pretty much all you have. kinda sad when you think about it, really. I also consider it fairly important to note that Maya herself does not actually have any kids of her own. I say this because this basically invalidates a lot of the points that she attempts to make in her arguments, which often rely on the lived experience of motherhood. I don't think I need to tell you what the gender-critical belief thinks womanhood comes down to, but I'll say it anyways. They think being a mother is an inseparable part of womanhood. So, where do you get your qualifications from, Maya? Besides supposedly talking to moms, I mean. Does this mean that you don't think you have experienced the full meaning of womanhood yourself, Maya? Because that's more or less what you seem to imply in your last tweet there. I think that, in this regard, Maya for starter has a lot more in common with trans women than she would like to admit. It's always something with these people, isn't it? Let's just line these transphobes up and just expose them for who they really are. Matt Walsh, pedophile. J.K. Rowling, transphobe. Destiny, fascist. Maya for starter, liar, and fraud. As for your punishments, I sentence you to a life without social media and to scrub all of the floors in Hyrule.
After you've scrubbed all the floors in Hyrule, then we can talk about Tala. Take them away.
I think this goes without saying, but I really think J.K. Rowling should reconsider her friendship with Maya. But then again, it's not like Rowling ever had a thing for good optics, and not looking like a permanently obsessed maniac anyway. Suffice to say, after these massive Twitter turds, Maya took a bit of a break, but decided to reply to the Tala question a last few times for good measure.
The people taking up the Tala design to troll me are absolutely proving my point too. At Hertz STC, at Hurt Library, at Hertz Owen Mapley 1. They / them is not a neutral mascot for reading, but a device to promote gender ideology and to paint parents who reject it as pearl-clutching bigots.
People who call me out for being disturbingly obsessed with a fictional alien toddler prove my point, that it's all just a device to promote
Gender ideology.
You see, you thought I was just a pearl-clutching bigot, while in fact my weird conspiracy about a cutesy alien cartoon promoting big trans by, teaching kids how to read was true all along. Somehow. No, Maya, the memes don't prove anything other than the fact that most people can see how utterly ridiculous your obsession with an innocent library mascot is. I can only hope that this meltdown of yours has highlighted just how laughable your other anti-trans takes are as well. I would laugh even harder if it wasn't for the fact that I know similarly obnoxious idiots on the internet are somehow going to agree with you on this. Even though these people are a small minority, it still pains me to know that I belong to the same species as them. Yuck. Okay, one more take before we wrap things up.
Council comes under fire for swapping library bear for non-binary alien.
I don't think this is a problem. Aliens don't have to reproduce sexually. There's an advantage in having a character that isn't identifiably male or female, as it can be equally relatable to either sex and avoid promoting gender stereotypes.
It seems highly unlikely that an alien that had evolved with such a recognizable vertebrate body plan is not sexually reproducing. It's a relatable, anthropomorphic character, not a slime mold.
When I mentioned I knew that some idiots are gonna agree with her on this, I wasn't excluding newspapers. Although, the word newspaper is doing a lot of legwork here. We've mentioned the Daily Mail in an earlier episode, and how they're a British far-right rag that was founded by a literal Nazi, so we won't go over them again. That being said, I think it's quite amusing how the headline states that the library's council is under fire for introducing Tala the alien. If you can't get a strong headline, I guess you can make stuff up. Nobody was upset at Tala besides Maya and a handful of her weirdo friends. It must have been disappointing for whoever wrote this article that they didn't get to milk J.K. Rowling's comments for clicks this time. It seems like Maya really doesn't have any problems with jumping straight into gender essentialism, which in and of itself isn't surprising. But why she picked a fictional cartoon character as the subject for this is anybody's guess. But don't let any of that distract you from Maya trying to roleplay as a doctor over here. Ah yes, the recognizable vertebrate body plan. Also has 3 fingers and 3 toes, but let's not get hung up on that, I guess. Dr. Forstarter is clearly much more interested in the alien toddler's junk. Make of that observation what you will. Well, that does it for today's video. I hope you've had fun learning at cringy gender critical rhetoric, and please join us next time when we continue our regularly scheduled programming of Going Over Weird Hills. Now, if you excuse me, Huh? Now, who could that be? I could have sworn I have no friends.
Trick or treat.
Ha! Nice try. You have to do way worse to get any scares out of. Happy Halloween from the CritFacts team. My name is Sarah Sonnier. I am a new voice actor. You can find me over at Sarah_the_otter, and I am attempting to do my best. I hope that you all have a wonderful day.